everyone, it's Bethany from Beth and Books and welcome back to this book nook. Today we're doing What the Hype episode 4. Thank you all so much for the feedback and comments you've left on my previous episodes of this series. I'm really enjoying that you're liking the more in-depth reading, vloggy, deep dive review style. Today we are doing for a hype book, I literally just forgot what it was called. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Right, let's put this in its rightful place. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when this book first came out, I saw it everywhere, all over Instagram. That's where I saw it, everywhere. In fact, I'll throw up like all these photos I saw of it, and it was getting really, really good reviews. There are children out there reflecting mirrors into the garden. Bye. If you're new to this series, here's a quick rundown of what happens. I've introduced the book. Next, I am going to go into some quick statistics, a quick synopsis, insert some of my during reading thoughts, and at the end of this all, I go into the my thoughts, my rating, your thoughts, and I look at some Goodreads reviews. So with everything being said, let's just jump right into this. So, some statistics. The 7 Husbands is an adult historical contemporary fiction with hints of romance and LGBT representation. The author is Taylor Jenkins Reid and it was originally published in 2017, so a solid 2 to 3 years ago now. It has 391 pages in the hardcover novel, so pretty standard size, and its Goodreads average star rating is 4.35, which is pretty up there considering it has over 200,000 star ratings put upon it. So synopsis time. Okay, so obviously Evelyn Hugo is our main protagonist. However, it sounds, if I've read the blurb correctly, that this is actually written from a journalist's perspective who is interviewing Evelyn. So Evelyn reaches out to the interviewer, the journalist, called Monique. Now, at the beginning, Monique is a bit like, what? Why the heck would she choose me? But her husband's recently divorced her, and she's kind of just in a why the heck not kind of moment in life. So the story follows Monique's interviews of Evelyn as Evelyn tells the tale of her own life, which started in the 1950s in LA through to the 80s when Evelyn decides not to continue her career in show business, and along the way you uncover the stories behind Evelyn's 7 husbands. Now, the very last sentence of this blurb is what intrigues me. Easy if I read it word for word. As Evelyn's story catches up with present time, it becomes clear that her life intersects with Monique's life in a tragic and irreversible way. So I'm really hoping that there's this nice plot twist that just adds that nice little extra something to this novel. So with that being said, I'm going to very quickly show you the key snippets of my reading thoughts. Future me, editing me, go ahead. Checking in, I am about halfway into this book, and honestly, I am quite surprised at how much I'm liking it. Reid has a really good way of keeping me super intrigued, and also bringing in, I don't want to say plot twists, just some new intriguing facts. From the very get-go though, I would say if you are looking at reading this book, you definitely need to be a lover of all things like contemporary, because although it's talking about relationships, you're not like backing the relationship, if you know what I mean, because you know that none of them are still ongoing at the present day of which you're reading this. In the first few pages, you learn that Evelyn has outlived all of her husbands, all 7 of them. So you're very much character-based, character-driven of Evelyn herself and Monique, who is the journalist. So yes, I am liking it so far. I definitely, I'm about halfway, and I do feel like I've been reading it for longer than that. It's taking me a wee while to get through, but still enjoying it. Halfway point, that note I made about the relationships. A relationship comes up and I'm quite invested. Not like as invested as you would be in a traditional romance, mind you, but just I am liking the reality that is woven throughout this in the world of Evelyn's romantic life. Alright guys, I've hit page 242 and I'm starting to feel like things are not progressing. Like, we're still in Evelyn's story, which makes sense, you know, 'cause she's the main character, but we were kind of promised a little bit of a mystery, a little bit of suspense, and you girls getting impatient.
Oh, morning team, it is hella raining out there, so apologies if you can hear that. I just wanted to pop in as I was, oh my gosh, this lighting is so not nice, as I was getting ready for work, because I finished The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo last night, and before getting into a deep review, I just wanted to give you like my final immediate thoughts. So long story short, that like mystery connection between Monique and Evelyn was revealed, and how do I put this? I liked it, but it wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be. Just some questions are answered, some revelations are clarified, but I do have to admit that the last like 20 pages, the topic that they talk about, really shocked me in a good way. I did not expect that at all. I mean, to be honest, I could have seen that coming if I had dedicated more time to like thinking about how the book would end, but I'm just not that kind of reader, so I didn't. But yeah, it really got me thinking. I really liked how it talked about that topic, so I do think kudos for that, because it is quite a taboo subject. And overall, ending the book, I don't feel 100% satisfied, but I appreciate what the author was trying to do. Right, I need to hurry up because I am running late.
Alright, so I am back from my day at work and have had time and I have written notes, so now I can clarify and articulate, hopefully, my thoughts and feelings about The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So to begin with, I think it makes the most sense to just launch in with if I think it's worth the hype or not. And the answer is yes. I think it is worth the hype. I gave it a 4.5 stars overall, breaking down my powers system being I gave people a 7, pace an 8, originality 10, world building 8, enjoyment 9, relationships 10, and style, as in the writing style, an 8. So before I get any further, I think it's kind of important to note that for me personally, this was the first book I've read that's really focused around Hollywood. So for me, how I've given originality a 10, it is quite original. And then delving into the pros. So the first pro of this, and part of how it links into that whole originality train of thought, is that there are some conversations which are very intense. So definitely some triggers. I guess I should throw those in here. You have miscarriage triggers. You have cancer leading to death triggers. You have car crashes. You have suicide. You also have, what's the word I'm looking for, domestic physical abuse and emotional abuse, as well as just LGBTQ, what's the word I'm looking for here, unacceptance. Yeah, so pros. LGBT was a way bigger component of this book than I thought. I don't want to give too much away, but just know that male-male and female-female relationships are quite a big part in this novel, and because of the time it's set in the 1950s onwards, there's lots of just horrible people saying horrible things about homosexuals and the impact that has on Hollywood at the time. I just thought it was a really interesting discussion, as well as the conversations around what women had to do in Hollywood. Now, this is a fictional novel, but when you research it and if you think about it, you don't doubt that some of these things really did happen. Evelyn is a fictional character, but it could almost be an actual biography of someone. It's written in a way that makes it quite believable in that sense. At the beginning, I think the book started off really strongly. There's a kind of connection between Monique, who is the person writing the biography of Evelyn, and Evelyn herself. Evelyn kind of promises for there to be some big mysterious answer at the end of it. So at the beginning, that mystery really pulled me along and got me intrigued to see what the big like reveal was. And it was done in a way, combined with a writing style, that really made the first 150, I think it was, pages quite easy to get into. But I think my favourite part of this book was the relationships. And I don't just mean how Evelyn's 7 husband relationships were portrayed, but the friendships within them, and how not all relationships are positive ones. Sometimes they are just there, especially in this Hollywood setting, to advance one person or the other, essentially using people. And I just liked how it was gritty in that sense. It's kind of like how I imagined Quentin Tarantino's latest movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's like what I imagined that movie to be like. Before I saw it, I thought there was going to be a little bit more intrigue, a little bit more grit and dirtiness to it. But honestly, I found the film rather boring, apart from that last gruesome end scene, which was quite entertaining. But this book is kind of what I thought that movie was going to be like. And at the end of this book, what was really tipped the scale and made my rating so high is the discussion around should people be able to take their own lives. She's just the only one left, and she doesn't quite feel happy anymore, and there's a discussion around that, which for me pushed it from being on the edge of is it worth the hype to yes, because I think it's quite a modern discussion to have, and also a hard discussion. I'm finding it really hard to talk about right now, as you can tell. So I think what Reed did really well, that's her name, eh? Yeah. What Reed did really well was to broach those topics in a way that felt seen, analysed all perspectives, and just brought them to a discussion point. Now, there are some cons, and in a way, I feel like my 4.5 stars doesn't quite show the amount of cons that I have. Maybe I should have been a bit harsher and given it only like 4 stars, but here are my critiques anyway. So at points when it swaps between Monique's perspective and Evelyn's perspective, I lost a bit of immersion. So Monique's writing Evelyn's biography, and this is essentially what I'm meant to believe. This is like the biography. So you're really in the throes and the midst of Evelyn's tales, and then Monique kind of puts her voice into it, which is often where I stopped reading, and it did take me 7 days to get through this book, which isn't always a bad thing, but just a thing to note. Like I mentioned, everyone is dead, and at times I did think to myself it seemed a bit easy, like a plot point. There was no other perspective to be heard. It was all just from Evelyn, which I understand, but there were definitely times where I was like, I would have loved to have heard from so-and-so's perspective. At about page 250, I started to want more of a change in pace. By all means, I was still enjoying the book, and it was actually at page 250 that I sat down and kind of finished it, but I definitely wanted things to change. Things started to feel a bit repetitive, a bit predictable, and as well as the fact that Monique kept apologising for things that she said, which started to grate on my nerves a little bit. But I suppose my biggest I don't want to say let down, because that makes me feel disappointed. I think it was less of it was less of a feeling of disappointment and more a feeling of, oh, okay, if that's where you're going to end it. I can't say anything without spoiling it, but just know there's a little feeling like something just hasn't been completely aired out, and I was just waiting for that. So overall, those are my thoughts, and now it is time to have a look at what your guys' thoughts were. As always, I popped this in my Instagram stories, and some of you responded. Okay, so the first person said actually something quite similar to mine, just felt like they needed a different ending, and I couldn't agree more. It's a real hard way to describe it. I'd be really interested if any of you have experienced that, in how you almost wanted something to happen, and yes, it would have been predictable, but it would have been so satisfying. This person said there was some great stuff, there was some cringy stuff, and in the end she cried. This is actually a similar message to this person about the crying side of things. I didn't cry. I've mentioned before, I'm quite a stone cold woman when it comes to crying in books, but 100% I can see why someone would. Reed did a really good job of making you feel connected to Evelyn. I guess that was a pro of her only being the only main character. The comment about the cringe, I'm trying to think when that could have been. I guess when I came across something that could be termed cringeworthy, I kept thinking that it was super dramatic because of who we were dealing with. You know, an actress who would do anything she needed to get what she wanted. Yes, she can be selfish and self-centered and extremely dramatic, but in my mind, I guess I just put that in the box of, yeah, well, it's Hollywood, and that's what a rising starlet may do. This person says really good but not groundbreaking. I can understand that perspective if you've read similar stuff before. I mentioned this earlier, it's the first kind of book like this for me, so I really enjoyed it. This person says they didn't get through much DNF. Like, I'm so sorry that happened for you. I always wish everyone to have the best reading experience, even if there's a book I don't like. I always hope people enjoy it. I really wonder if contemporaries and like this sort of historical contemporary style is something you would read often. I think I'm only enjoyed this book as much as I did because contemporaries is something I've started to really get into, more so the adult contemporaries recently, so it's something I was interested to read more. I know if like younger me who just read YA fantasy read this, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much either. So with that, I'd recommend this to you if you like Hollywood, if you like a little bit of an acting drama film story. I really felt like I read part of the books in black and white. I don't know, by black and white I mean like I could almost see things playing out in my head like a black and white sepia film, so it did have this like old agey vibe to it. Don't expect relationships, how do I word this, satisfying relationships. Not all of what goes down is ship worthy at all, but there are a couple of relationships which are quite heartwarming. So yeah, that's it from me. Leave a comment down below if you have a suggestion for my next What the Hype video. And with all that being said, enjoy all the places you go in your own reading adventures, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.